How are you all? I'm Kieran Guiry, and today I'm going to talk to you about perspective. The definition of perspective is the art of representation of 3D objects on a 2D surface so as to give the right impression of their height, depth, and width in relation to each other. So basically, in simpler terms, this definition would be the way an object appears to the human eye. a key a key, I suppose, one of the most main points in perspective is the horizon line. The horizon line is the line on which the spectator is looking at an object. For example, you take, let's say, the desert, for example. You look at just a desert, an open desert, nothing. You look along the desert, eventually you'll see where the desert meets the sky. That line on the ground that you see with your eye, that line we would call the horizon line. The horizon line differs from as the height of the observer changes. So basically, if you lie on the ground, your eye line would be lower, so that would make your horizon line lower. The opposite would be from above then. If you, say, stand up higher, your eye line would be higher, so your horizon line would in turn be higher. Another main point in perspective is the picture plane. The picture plane basically is the view that the observer sees from where they're standing. You can see here I did a little sketch. We see the cube. The cube is equal sides of length, height, and depth, but where the observer is standing gives a different interpretation of what the cube actually is. You can see here the lines of sight converge at the observer's eye, the station point. So here we see the spectator is at a finite distance from the object looking into the cube, and he sees a different, say, view as to where you would see from where you're standing, because the position of the spectator dictates the size and the view of the object. Here I'm going to show you another example. Below here we have spectator 1 and spectator 2. I have the spectator 1 in red and the spectator 2 in blue, as you can see. You look at the spectator 1, the shape we get from the view of spectator 1 is kind of small, close together. If you see, it's kind of blocky. The spectator 2 then is further away. You can see the spectator 2 is more narrow. Looks as if you were looking at it from longer away. There are three main types of perspective. I show them here. There's 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective, and 3 point perspective. The way I like to sum this up is, we look at a box of cards, say. You look at the box of cards straight on. What do you see? You see a face. To get the 1 point perspective of this view, just tilt the box and look at the top of it a small bit. That would be the 1 point perspective view of this. Looking at the 2 point perspective, we'll be turning the box to the side and looking at it from the corner view, from the same height as you would be looking at from the 1 point perspective. The final example is 3 point perspective. The 3 point perspective would be if you were looking at the same view as the 2 point perspective from this corner, but you were looking down on the box. This would be the 3 point perspective. A prime example of this, another one, would be if you're on a busy street, you look straight down the street, you see the two houses parallel either side of you. That would be 1 point perspective, as you can see the two views heading towards the one street. 2 point perspective would be, say, looking at the corner of a building from the same, as I said, the same height as the 1 point perspective. You can see the depth heading off one direction, the width heading off the other, and the height is normally still the same as the 1 point perspective. The 3 point perspective then would be if you were looking at the same building from the corner, but from a height. You would see the top of the building and the lines would be heading more obscured down rather than vertically. Finally, we come to parallel perspective. Parallel perspective is basically when the face of an object is parallel to a plane. As we can see here, the spectator and the vanishing point are on the same line, and the face of the object is basically split halfway between the spectator. An example I like to say of parallel projection is look at train tracks. If you stand on train tracks and look along train tracks, you can see both sides of the track heading into one direction. And to your eye level, eventually you will see these train tracks meet somewhere. Might not be close, but eventually they will meet. That is how I like to sum up parallel perspective. So to sum up some key points I mentioned today, the spectator is the observer a finite distance away from the object it's looking at. The distance of the spectator from the object often dictates the size and the view of the object. There are three main types of perspective: 1-point perspective, 2-point perspective, and 3-point perspective. Depending what you're looking at and where you're looking from would depend on which one of these perspectives you would use in drawing the object, as the height, how far you are away, or what you are looking at often dictates what you might draw. And finally, parallel perspective is a perspective when the face of the object is parallel from the picture plane. As I said, the prime example of this is train tracks. Thanks very much for your time.